Gentlemen, you are both drunk on cosmic wine.
Welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Mark Sylvester.
And I'm Dr. Richard Schulman. This is Alt Psych.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. We have a very special topic this week, one I think every single person can relate to.
Because they're living it.
What are we talking about, Rich?
We're talking about mental health during COVID-19, or maybe lack of mental health during.
Just all of the mental health issues, metrics. We have a lot more data now than we did in March. People's attitudes have evolved. People's beliefs and understandings of this illness are constantly changing. And it's been really sobering in preparing for this show to come up and look at a bunch of objective measures, not only to just pay attention to them because everything else in the universe has been lost in the fog of COVID fear, but also to make you realize on a broader scale how much COVID, mostly indirectly, has affected other equally important phenomenons, for lack of a better word, whether that's a suicide rate or somebody experiencing anxiety for the first time in their life and they don't really know why, somebody without any problem sleeping all of a sudden has insomnia and they don't know where it's coming from. So this is going to be an exciting episode. And because, Dr. Schulman and I decided to be the self-proclaimed experts of our own world, I'm
just a witness.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen more drug overdose deaths. I've seen more suicides. The level of trauma, even if they're not talking about COVID, it's almost like the times have amplified whatever's going on for people. The kinds of cases that I see, the depth of despair, I like that word for this, is beyond anything I've ever seen before. And I actually, like you said, preparing for this show, I started reading these testimonials, so to speak, to how crazy things are. And there was one that was just, I want to quote it if I could find it. It says, Dr. Mike DeBoisblanc at John Muir Medical Center in Walnut Creek, California, stated the hospital, quote, had seen a year's worth of suicide attempts in just 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're seeing here too.
And that's what I'm seeing in my practice as well. And again, correlation isn't causality, but it makes you really wonder what the trigger, I guess, the flint that set off this constantly burning, evolving crisis, really.
Well, Mark, a lot of people are talking correlation isn't causality, but science is about observation, and we're observing this in real time. And we might want to say that the reason that we're getting all these suicides or drug overdoses and all kinds of other mental health problems is because they ran out of French fries at McDonald's. We could say that, but it's more likely that it's because of this mass event that has captivated our entire society and the entire world. In fact, I had a patient say to me, I'm getting out of town. I'm going to cancel my appointment. I'm getting out of town. I've got to get out of here. I'm going to leave town. And my response, without thinking, and I really should be more mindful, was, what planet are you going to, Alpha Centauri? Where are you going to get away from this?
Space station, man. Those guys have it good.
Unless they send somebody else up there and they're not wearing a mask.
No, up there.
They change.
They clear you.
Oh, okay. I'm glad to hear. It's kind of like the Stanley Cup. They're in the bubble,
No, my point is not the COVID itself, but all of the sequela that comes out of it. For instance, you lose your job. You can't provide for your family. all these little hits can worsen a depression. If it's a simmering depression, it just, you get to a place of learned helplessness and just wanting to give up because you don't see a way out. And you get to a point where suicide seems like logically it's the best choice. It's the best option.
Well, it's I want to quote this study. The CDC, of all people, asked. Let me see if I can find it exactly. It was in June. They asked people in June, and they found that 10.7% of all Americans, that's a lot of people, had seriously considered suicide in the past 30 days.
Yeah, I saw that study too. It's staggering.
25% of kids, 12, I think it was 12 to 17. If I can find it exactly.
Yeah, 25%, 18 to 24.
And it's bizarre. And caregivers who are unpaid, 36% had considered suicide. Frontline workers, 21%. We've never seen figures like this.
Nope. And it's to me, that's has overshadowed the threat of COVID itself, more because we were so hyper-focused on COVID and what it was, what it wasn't, but we were neglectful of the secondary effects are there effects on the economy? Sure. And does that economy relate to mental health and depression and stress? Sure. But I'm talking just about the mental health implications of living in this era, in this time. These numbers are really staggering. And those are considering suicide. That's a permanent, event.
Seriously considering suicide. I mean, you got to really look at the wording of it. They also found that 40% were reporting anxiety, depression, symptoms of trauma or stress-related disorders. 13% of American adults reported new or increased substance use to manage stress. We started this with 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Mm-hmm. We're about day 160 something now. And the goalposts keep moving, and I think that people are really weary of fighting a war with no exit strategy.
Well, not only weary, but they're losing confidence and security in whatever new plan is given to help reassure them. That's a problem. When the president withholds information from the public because of whatever reason, protection, that is a problem. Not only in terms of the virus, again, we stick really to the mental health, but when you do that, your initial attempt is to try to protect your little children, these little Americans, and it backfires because then when they realize you didn't tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, you hid it from them. Now their trust in their government and their administration takes a beating. And when they lose trust, what goes up? Insecurity, fear.
Well,
depression.
I've been doing a lot of reading about this. In the Soviet Union, before it fell, everyone knew the leaders were lying. Okay. So they say it was a big harvest this year. Then they go to the grocery store. There's no bread on the shelves. At a certain point, they described a situation where the people lost hope. They lost belief that anything they were being told was true, but they didn't know what else to do. I think we're getting real close to this. There's a whiplash effect that we've been experiencing. And if you want to hypnotize someone, you use confusion, frustration, and repetition. So let's review. We don't want you to wear a mask. Turned out that was a lie. It was masks are ineffective. That was a lie because they said they wanted to, later that Fauci said he wanted to preserve the personal protective equipment for healthcare workers. Okay, so you don't need a mask. You could wear one, but it's largely symbolic. You better wear a mask or you're going to kill grandma. The next one was, it's mildly helpful. then it's symbolic again. Then it's coming down mandates. You wear a mask or you can't go in the grocery store. And the goalposts have changed so radically, and people want to hang on something, it becomes very divisive. So we have people who say, well, this mask thing, it's all just indoctrination. Other people say, well, you know, you have to do it. That's patriotism now. If you wear a mask, you're helping everybody else. I don't know about you, but I don't think the science is settled on any of this. And then you get even further down the rabbit hole. People don't trust big pharma. They don't trust the government. Why? Because we've been lied to so often. Then you start changing the goalposts. Well, you know, you could go into Costco and Target and Walmart, but don't go into Pete's hardware store. That one's going to close down. You know, we're not allowing some things to be open, but liquor stores are an essential. I'm not kidding. Liquor stores and marijuana dispensaries are an essential service. And you're not allowed to go into the hospital to advocate for your loved one, but as long as you're protesting, knock yourself out. I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong here. I'm saying that from a mental health point of view, this is what makes people crazy.
Yeah, and I see it day in, day out. And early on, it was subtle, and it wasn't as obvious, and I didn't know how concerned I would be about the resiliency of people, the average American. But we're in a unique spot now. We have the gift of hindsight. We've got data points, and now we can start extrapolating and really getting our mind around the whole kit and the caboodle. I read it was a recent poll, so about 10 days ago, and it had said 53% of American adults said that their mental health has been negatively impacted due to worry and stress over the coronavirus. So 53%. Worry is one thing. 36% of them are having trouble. They're losing sleep over this worry. 32 are having trouble eating. They're unable to eat because of this worry. 12%, we talked about substance abuse, and we hope to have a special guest on to dive into that piece alone is easily a show. But 12% started increasing their alcohol consumption, increasing their substance use or abuse, or even taking up drugs as a way to self-medicate or change the way that they're feeling. And then 12% reported worsening of other health conditions due to their worry and stress. And the most interesting part about this poll was the people who did the worst were the ones that were sheltering at home in place.
Right.
40% of whom report negative health effects, whereas 37% of the non-shelterers were having the same negative health effects. So I did a radio show this morning, and that was one of the things that we talked about was, well, we talked about two things. We talked about how COVID was different from 9/11, but we also talked about, and you and I have talked about this on this show, the social distancing somehow turned into psychological distancing. And it's like, no. We got to be pulling together emotionally, socially, which we can easily do in a social distancing way. We do not have to throw the baby out with bathwater and give into psychological distancing or distancing from friends and family. Because
I saw a report of the guy. It was very interesting. The guy said we have gotten COVID lazy. Well, you know, there is a disruption in the supply chain to some degree. So you want to get your car fixed. Mm-hmm. Well, we won't have the part for 10 days. Well, the government says don't go outside and exercise. I'm supposed to stay at home. Well, I don't know if I should look for a job. I'm still getting unemployment from the government. And he called it COVID lazy. And somebody posted on one of my Facebook posts and said, I want my life back. But my reaction to it is, that doesn't come with an invitation.
Yeah.
You're going to have to take your life back. You're going to have to start doing things. And, you know, I was thinking about this. I brought my lightning hat because it's the Stanley Cup. And I usually go to hockey games. And it bothers me that I can't go to the damn Stanley Cup this year.
As it should.
I mean, you know, there's no live music. A lot of the things, you know, that people ordinarily did to cope, they can't do. And the other thing is, you know, uncertainty will bring anxiety. So from the start, we didn't really know what this was. We don't know if we're going to get sick. There's this implication that you're sick without symptoms. That's crazy making to me. There's this, okay, so you don't know if you're going to get sick. You don't know if you're going to die. You don't really know too many people. A lot of people don't know anyone who's been sick or even tested positive. Okay, then you find things like, well, 77 National Football League players tested positive, so they start shutting down the camp. They retested them, they were all false. 77 out of 77 false positives. This doesn't build confidence. So you don't know if you're going to get sick, you don't know if you're going to die, you don't know if you're going to have a job, you don't know if you can pay the light bill, you don't know if your leaders know anything, and you don't know when it's going to end.
And that uncertainty is the breeding ground for catastrophic thinking. I
Absolutely.
mean, prepare for the worst because I'm not certain what's coming next. I'm surprised we're not seeing more doomsdayers, preppers, and, you know, end of times people. I mean, and it's a it's more than just the seething tension of the time. This is escalating. All right.
But there's another piece of this before you go into the escalation. This has been going on before COVID. I read a study recently. It was, you know, insurance companies, they don't want to pay out money. BCBS, mental health insurance claims from 2013 to 16 found increases in the coding of major depression from age 12 to 17, 63% increase. From 18 to 34, 47% increase. This is before COVID. 35 to 49, 23% increase. Overall in the country, increase in major depression coding, and they have a pretty big population, 33% from 2013 to 16. Things were already falling apart. And, you know, people were already having this sort of crisis of despair. Kids having to stay at home till they're 30 because they can't buy a house. The ordinary processes that people got used to are not happening.
So now, this is, you're saying this building or
it's been building,
shoulders of the previous anxiety.
Absolutely. It's been building, and now you get this current trauma, a societal trauma, and it's made worse by the idea. To me, the worst thing is you can be asymptomatic and still have it or be a carrier. This is, I don't know when this will end because of that fact.
I don't know that it's sustainable. And if you look at the early, like starting in January, and you look at the early studies, you know, like for example, from January to June 2019, the rate in the population of anxiety or depressive disorder was right around 10, 11%. Okay. And that was, like you said, already escalated. But let's just use that as a baseline. The weekly average for May of this year is 34.5%. That's shocking. That's striking to me. That's a mental health epidemic. It's a crisis. The following month, that number went up to 36.5%. July, the following month, we're at 40%. Now, I don't have data for August yet, but you can see where this is going. This is a cancer of our psyche that's growing that we've got to intervene on, or we're going to see suicides continue to escalate. You know, the COVID charts are actually going to be the suicide charts and the depression charts, this sharp increase.
It's already happening with high school kids. High school kids are far more likely to die of suicide or drug and alcohol influence than COVID, far more likely. This is shocking to me. It's almost as if we don't care what happens to our kids. I mean, it's pretty, you could get a little crass on this, and I'm going to, because it's part of my
Please
personality.
press away.
If I have to decide if it's me or my kids, it's me. I'm gonna take the hit. Okay? Kids are suiciding at rates they've never seen before. And you and I have dealt with adolescent, addiction problems and other kinds of mental health problems. And it is a real danger place for suicide. But
Mm-hmm.
these kids are not likely to even get the disease or die from it. We're acting as if um, we have to keep them safe, and we're actually making it more dangerous by
And
keeping them out of school and out of social interaction, which they desperately need.
yeah, and I think, drug overdoses, we don't know because they're dead and we can't ask them, but they may have been suicide attempt.
True, but the issue, that's right. But if you take them together as a
Yeah.
response to an insane situation,
Yep.
it makes sense to me. And it's such a horrific situation for kids. You know, I have a kid in my practice that almost died. Now, would this child have said, thank God she didn't, by the way, would this child have said, this is because of COVID? No. She said, I can't get a job. I can't go to school.
Hmm.
I have nothing to do.
But
You
that's
know,
because of COVID,
exactly. But she wouldn't have
secondarily.
said I'm worried about COVID. Okay.
Right.
What she would have said is, I was bored. I was upset. I'm fighting at home. I can't see my friends. I can't, these are the kinds of things that when you work with adolescents, they're real important to kids. And first of all, we don't really spend a lot of time talking to kids. Well, this COVID thing is really serious. And on the other hand, the kids, I read a study where the kids vastly overestimated how many Americans had died.
Hmm.
The estimate, I think it was millennials they were talking about, they estimated that 9% of Americans had died from COVID, which would be something like 30 million.
Hmm.
Okay. There's a lot of misinformation out there about this. I can't speak to whether it's intentional or not, but the idea that we can't know the truth and that everybody has an agenda, the kids are far smarter than the adults about this stuff. They've grown up in a computer age. They've grown up where you can splice a conversation together, make it
Right.
sound any way you want. We didn't grow up with that. We had to get up to speed with it. To me, I still feel like I'm living in a science fiction movie. Not the kids, not our kids. They grew up
Well,
with this stuff.
that's why I think our show on kids and COVID was so successful, was
Very
because
popular.
no one was really thinking about it from the kids' eyes. I mean, today we're talking more about how it's affected society, the adults, and mental health in particular. But the research has been clear on this one for years that isolation, loneliness is bad for your health, both physical and mental. And
Well,
there,
I actually read a statistic. See if I can get it. It was lack of social connection heightens health risks as much as smoking 3/4 of a pack of cigarettes a day every day.
mm,
So that's pretty profound, And if you look at what's happening now, there are four things that have gone on, major league stories. You got the COVID-19, you got the mass layoffs, unemployment, the response to the disease, the quarantine, the shutdown. Then you got the mass protests over the killing of the guy in Minneapolis, George Floyd, by the cops. And now you got this little afterthought called the presidential election. These are four humongous things going on, and there's an overwhelm. There's an absolute overwhelm. So when people get overwhelmed, what happens? What
well,
we're
that's
seeing: anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicide, drug overdoses. I mean, and from my point of view, if the economy doesn't recover, if we actually hit the depression that we might, it's going to seem like 1929 was a birthday party.
well, yeah, but people don't remember the mental health consequences of 1929 as acutely as I hope
Well,
they
you
will
know, there
remember
not too many
this.
of them are still around, but it's the idea of it. We've lived in a post-traumatic stress breeding ground
Yeah.
for 8 months now, or whatever it is. I don't.
Well, social isolation, loneliness, they all increase risk of premature mortality. The magnitude of the risk exceeds that of many of the other leading health indicators. Coronavirus has obviously exacerbated the problem. You've got new onset symptoms, mental health symptoms, but what about all the people who had existing mental health systems? Because the
My
effects.
my practice, everybody who had existing mental health systems got worse.
Absolutely. Like the effects of the crisis are far reaching, much farther reaching than people, I think, are able to really comprehend right now.
You know, I would suggest that our viewers out there, and please contact us. You know, you can
We'd
get
love
through to
some
us on
comments.
Facebook.
We'd love
Um,
your comments.
how many people do you know that have been affected emotionally by this crisis versus how many people do you know actually got sick? I think we're
Yeah,
going to find that there's a far greater mental health component to this. And I want people to be aware of it because, as Mark said at the beginning, we're going to have to figure out some very powerful interventions, or we have a pandemic that will be decades long in terms of the mental health consequences.
absolutely. And, you know, we're running a little short on time, but there's two other things I want to mention that those, the crisis of anxiety we'll just talk about, and that stress and what we've been talking about, there's like a trickle down effect. So yes, that makes addiction worse. Yes, it makes behavioral disorders like OCD, ADHD, substance abuse. Some people's personalities have been wildly sensitive and changed to that. They're more likely to have violence, you know, at the gas pump or the grocery store, along with the good that social distancing can do for our own health and society. Again, I spoke on the radio show, it increases feelings of isolation, loneliness, stress, fear, all of which can be triggers that make many mental health illnesses worse. We need to start seriously thinking about this
Well,
because, like you said, decades will be reeling from the mental health consequences and
I would
the
say
lives that were lost.
I would kind of wrap up on this note. We tend, you know, at 9/11, we got together with our friends. You know, I lost my cousin that day, and the families of the people who died certainly got close. Everybody commiserated about this. There were 1,000 people at his funeral. It was quite a remarkable event. But more than that, if you look at people who didn't lose a family member, they all felt like they had, and they all got together in community. If you look at how our best bet about treating substances,
Mm-hmm.
AA, community, there's a community healing event that helps with hopelessness. When you really feel hopeless, you gather people around and you connect. I don't see us doing that right now. Even online, I don't see us really doing it. So I would say we have to think really long and hard about this and come up with positive solutions because this thing's going to be around for a while. The mental health effects are going to be here.
The last thing I want to say is doing a little compare contrast because we're at a unique time where the inflection points flipped, in my opinion. These are some interesting numbers from to put the COVID-19 situation in perspective. If you go back to 2018, all right, you look at the absolute numbers of, let's say, drug overdoses, 72,000. Suicide, 49,000. Car accidents, 38,000. Falls, 27,000. Accidental poisoning, 8,000. Murder, 16,000. If I add those all up, 210,000 per year, averages 963 deaths per day. All right. Where we are now is somewhere around that number, 874. So if any of those statistics, like the overdoses, the poisonings, the falls, accidents, murder, suicide, any of that has gone up, which we clearly know that it has, then we should be much more concerned about mortality from mental health than COVID at this point. The inflection point is COVID is not our greatest enemy right now anymore. And you're not going to hear that from a president or maybe even a doctor. It may take someone who's really interested in mental health to see that as the thread that ties all these other metrics. Because don't forget, these statistics, these are people's lives.
Wow, what a great way to end the show, man.
Yeah, well,
that was brilliant. All week. I have a
Mm-hmm.
brilliant friend over here. He's really something.
Yeah. So what's that? We're out of time?
Sort of, yeah.
All right.
So everybody be thinking about this, and please send us your thoughts and comments through the Alt Psych Facebook page.
We really value your comments. They help us form shows. They help us ask questions through you to answer. They help us get guests and experts in the area. And they help us know what you are interested in, what you want to see more of. So please,
absolutely,
make sure you click the link above. Swipe right. Follow. Friend. Phone a friend.
Okay.
Until next time, let's all remember, be well.
Be well. Woo!
Why are you always so late on that?
I don't know. I swing late on some pitches. Hey.
Better than swinging both ways.
Go Bolts. Lightning.
What? We're cutting out.